RJ Barrett with a familiar backbreaking three. Jaylen Brown with, unfortunately, some more backbreaking free throw misses. The Celtics, they dropped their third in a row. The commiseration begins next on First to the Floor.
Who was going to be first to the floor here? And it was Marcus Smart, as he usually is.
As Brown drives, layup off the glass.
It's not the first time we've seen a superstar in green and white sacrifice the body.
Garnett knocked away.
Hey, welcome into another episode of First to the Floor. Ben Vallis here. Thank you for joining us. Hope you're doing well, which you surely are not after that terrible performance by the Boston Celtics. Thank you for joining us. The Celtics drop this one, 120 to 117 against a fiery Julius Randle and Jalen Brunson. Joining us to talk all about it, Hot Take Jake Eisenberg. Jake, how's it going, man?
Going really good, Ben. Yeah, going really good. How about you? How about yourself?
Oh, just fine and dandy. So good. Yeah,
Feeling
no
good.
worries, mate. Bit of a stinker by the Celtics in that one. The plan for this podcast is just to get together, ruminate, commiserate, as I said in the beginning there, and just try and collectively get over what is now a 3-game skid and some very disappointing missed free throws by Jaylen Brown at the end there. But Jake, that's not the full story, right? It didn't, those missed free throws, as disappointing as they were, are not the catalyst for this loss. There was a lot going into why we were even in that position in the first place. What are your main takeaways from this one?
Yeah, no, look, Jalen, you can't put it all on Jalen's missed free throws. He also missed 7 3-pointers and 14. No, this is not all on Jalen. The whole team decided to not play defense for 3.75 quarters. And once they turned the defense on, lo and behold, they started to shut down Brunson and Randle. Tatum was as guilty as anybody. He was getting blown by everybody for a lot of this game. So that was it. It's the defense. And coming into this game, it was, okay, were the 2 losses against Orlando and Miami going to be just 2 losses because they were down players? Orlando plays like the 95 Bulls against us. You can chalk that up to the basketball gods. And the Miami one you can chalk up to having 4 of your best players missing. Tonight you had enough pieces, no question, to win this game. And we're going to get to how important Marcus Smart is at some point. But they looked past him. They underestimated Julius Randle. They underestimated Jalen Brunson. And it cost them because they got cooked all night long.
Yeah, a real lack of effort. We sound like broken records. Anyone, I think, talking about this game is going to feel the same sense in evaluating it, and it's just more of the same as far as, they came out lackluster. They'd had a couple of poor performances on the road, coming off a scintillating win on the road up there in Toronto. Pooing the bed, I'll say, to censor myself in Florida. And then coming back and probably expecting a win coming home with some good energy there in TD Garden. And just a very lackluster effort and letting guys like Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle, and credit to those guys, like they played hard, they played well. But there was a very notable lack of defensive effort. And like you mentioned, they switched it on. They flipped the switch late in the fourth quarter, maybe halfway through the fourth quarter. And it was like, there they are. There's our buddies. There's the Celtics we know. But it was too little too late. And they put themselves in these dicey situations because late game execution, crunch time execution has not always been a strong point for like Jason Tatum, for example. We're talking about it in our playback stream, which, I want to say that we had a lot of fun holding throughout the course of the game until, the inevitable occurred.
We did have fun.
We did have fun. But the Jason Tatum game winner opportunity there where he sort of took that Paul Pierce just right at the free throw line, pull-up shot, missed. Low success rate for Tatum. It feels like, correct me if I'm wrong, but a low success rate for the Celtics in those situations. So, flipping the switch late, you're going to more likely end up in those situations, which you clearly don't succeed very often in. So just don't do that. I don't know. Am I asking for too much here, Jake?
I don't know. Maybe it was just you getting reps. Let's play awful so we make sure that the game's close down the stretch so we get more reps in these clutch situations because otherwise we're too good and we're going to win by too many points. That could have been something that they decided to do for some reason.
I have to believe that's what it was.
It's so frustrating because, coming out of this game, I think if you're rational, you're thoughts and how much you believe in this team's ability to win a title should not be different to today,
Agreed.
to prior to the 3 games that they won. To the 3-game losing streak. Like, I think that should not have changed. It's just these guys have bad habits, and it's the 82-game season. It's all of those things we've talked about before, and you just don't know when they're going to snap out of it. And tonight was like, it was very, reminiscent of the Pacers game. Our mate Jackson said it on the playback stream. This feels very reminiscent of the Pacers game. They played worse in the first half than the Pacers game and better for an entire half. They just didn't go down by 30 in the Knicks game, so they didn't actually have to flip the switch until later. But it's very similar in that, they don't play the right way. They're not moving the ball on offense as much, stagnating, and defensively, it's just not there. Outside of like Robert Williams, and the mistress, of course, who I thought at least fought all night, even if they did get beaten a few times.
Yeah, I'm just looking at, as you were talking there, Jake, cleaning the glass, and it's a tale of two halves of the court. So the Knicks, I don't want to say dominant in half-court possessions, but 98.9 points per play. Good for the top 57th percentile, so not particularly dominant. The Celtics, though, good for the 9th percentile at 80 points per play. So a huge disparity in half-court efficiency between the two teams. The Celtics, meanwhile, did quite well in transition, plus 10.3 points per possession, good for 94th percentile, season-wide among all teams in transition. The Knicks, 22nd percentile at minus 0.8. So the issue was just the frequency of our transition plays and the lackluster defense coming up until that point where they flipped the switch in the fourth quarter. We weren't defending at a point where we could generate as many transition opportunities as we'd liked. We're obviously executing out of them efficiently, but we just couldn't create them enough.
It's honestly impressive that the Celtics have the 4th best defensive rating in the league when they have what feels like so many of these games where they don't try on defense. And again, it's so frustrating because it's so obvious on the positive impact that it has on the offense and their ability to just win games going away. Like, just play defense and you win these games easily. You probably get rest in the fourth quarter because it felt like that's what they wanted to do. They wanted to cheat their way to some rest. They wanted to cheat their way to an easy win. And this is the NBA. The Knicks have been good. The talent in this league does not allow you to just like rock up and get an easy win. See it with the Magic. See it tonight. Like, Brunson's really freaking good. Randall having a really, really good year. You have to take these teams seriously. My dad in the chat, like, we see the defense when they crank it up. That's a championship level defense. They're now, 2.5 games ahead for the 1 seed. Doesn't really feel like they care about winning the 1 seed when they turn up like they did today.
Yeah, shout out to Mr. Eisenberg in the chat, by the way. Thank you for joining us. Love the family affair we've got going on here. One game ahead of the Sixers in the loss column now. So I think they're still up 2.5 games or whatever it might be. But this is why you build the cushion, but the cushion is deflating, Jake. Like, it's away from us. Like, I feel like a week ago we were talking about how this was an insurmountable league in the first spot there, or thereabouts for the Celtics, and like it's been surmounted. Right? Like,
yes. Well, here's the thing, though. It's like, my prediction is probably they have this little lull. They turn up big against Anthony Davis, LeBron James coming to town. And I think we're going to get to the schedule later, but like, depending on who's in the schedule afterwards, like, we're going to go on another 9-game winning streak. We're going to go on another 12-3 stretch. And we're going to probably build up another 2-3 games in the standings again. Like, that's the most likely scenario to me. Just the Sixers aren't losing a lot of games either right now. So like, they're going to hang around.
I believe you though. Like, my confidence in the long-term goals of this team
I'm glad.
haven't wavered at all, but it doesn't make this any less disappointing and devastating. And I feel like I've said that exact sentence so many times on post-game podcasts so far this season. It's getting sad.
Well, I think what's really like hard to wrap your head around is like, because they do multiple games in a row, like 3-game stretch here. It's like, 9 games in a row where we saw them do it night in, night out, tough wins, grinding out, missing guys, back to backs. And then in spots like tonight where you're at home, you've got your guys, like you match up really well and like well enough, obviously. Like they don't have guys for Jason. The double big lineup was killing them at times. It's like if they were able to, win 7 games in a row, then lose 1, and then they get back on the horse again. Mm-hmm. That's more easy to wrap your head around because it's just one game that pops up. But we have these stretches that seem to last multiple games, 2 weeks even, where you can start to talk yourself into maybe these guys aren't actually that good. And then the next game is the beginning of the stretch where they look like the best team in the league again. So you got to ride the waves.
The absence of Marcus Smart is quietly devastating. Yes. I think that's not a hot take. I think people are feeling that. Clearly, the team is feeling that. He's such a big rally the troops guy. We've seen it so many times where he calls these little mid-game huddles, gets the guys together mid-court, and sort of is the catalyst for a turnaround that we might need. And can't help but think the injection of some Smart energy in this one would have been just enough to get us over the hump, despite the lackluster defense for the majority of the game. Spoonie had a good call out with a stat during our playback stream that the offense is +5 with Marcus Smart on the court throughout the course of what is now a 50-game season. So that's a significant sample size. Obviously, he's missed some time recently, but that's just huge. What's your sense there? I know, Derek White's your mistress. Where it was sort of in a love-hate relationship. Thank you, Big Task at Hand, for your inputs.
We got a Knicks fan trolling us in the chat here. Fair enough.
That's all right. We appreciate your engagements. It's helpful for us. So you may think you're trolling us, but you're actually helping.
Yeah.
What's your take on Smart's absence? Because we've been heralding the depth of this team, and that people are going to have missed time. Marcus Smart's missing time currently. Well, that's okay. We've got Derek White. We've got Big Brogger, we've got Peyton Pritchard, and yet neither of those guys really delivered in this game. So are you feeling a sense of urgency to get Smart back despite the depth?
Yeah, tonight is one of those games where you miss the heart and soul, the love and the trusted Marcus Smart. As good as he is on defense, like maybe we get one of those those Tommy points, Marcus diving into the crowd, saving a loose ball, but offensively, the stagnation just is far less frequent when Marcus Smart is on the court. Like he gets people going. We can go to the Marcus Tatum pick and roll. That's like unstoppable. Without that it felt like they just didn't have something they could go to like we were talking about it while watching the game. This was the first run of the game was the fourth quarter. We had the early run where we all were like, this is probably a bad sign. They've made 5 threes in a row. They're not going to play any defense. And that's what happened. And we had to wait until the fourth quarter to finally string some stops together, get out and run, go to some of your go-to plays, your go-to sets that getting Tatum to the line, getting those things that get you moving in a positive direction. And Marcus Smart's so good at setting the table, being the captain of the offense that you're gonna miss guys. You're gonna miss your heart and soul is gonna be missed eventually. Because this is the 4th game in a row, or 3.5 game now where we haven't had him, and you start to feel it as things go along.
How much of this this concern with the depth, at least in the vacuum of this game? So early in the fourth quarter, Tatum was out for a period of time, and despite the celebration of depth going into this season, we find ourselves in this this offensive production bottleneck with Tatum on the bench. We're just back in the same position again where unless Tatum's on the court, despite the depth, we have no production. How much of that is I don't want to sound like a Boston talk radio guy, but how much blame is on Jaylen Brown for that? Because he's meant to be filling in those gaps,
Yes, and I'm trying to quickly look up Marcus's kind of missed games here and how many of them we've won, and we've actually fared pretty well in them. We're slightly above 500 in the games without Marcus. And look, a lot of and Edward Walker in the chat here. Yeah, the Celtics have no excuse to lose this game. They should have won this game. They were 4-1 favorites. They were heavy favorites 9-point favorites coming into this game. Everybody believed that they should win this game. They believed it too much. They looked at the betting lines apparently before coming into this one.
Put a couple of bets on.
Yeah, maybe. Look, I may have put $5 on the Knicks as well because I had a feeling. The depth is there, no question. They've been able to survive. The Raptors game is an example, obviously, of them being able to to win with it with depth. Even the Heat game that they lost, you've got your Peyton Pritchard's playing 40 minutes, and they're still in it. No Jimmy Butler, but the fact they're still in it with 4 key guys missing. They've won games this year where it just felt like they've been short, and we've really heralded the depth. I think the reality is, you're just not going to win all of those games. But tonight, you gotta put your hand up and just say not good enough. And unfortunately, saying it's not good enough doesn't really help us feel any better. Because they say the right things. I'm gonna go back and watch the post-game press conferences after this, and I have no doubt that they were said we have to come out with better intensity. We got to play defense.
We like the shots we were getting.
Yeah, exactly. And look, big task at hand. Give it to the Knicks. Like they made the Celtics uncomfortable throughout the game. And Brunson, dude, you got to take these guys seriously. He forced the man right. The man right. He's so good with his left hand and getting to his spots, pull-ups, like around the rim, floaters. It's tough.
Yeah, and again, Marcus Smart should be able to win this game without him. Even if we were missing another of our guards, you'd think we still have the tools necessary to win this game. But Smart is exactly the kind of guy you need on Jalen Brunson when he gets cooking like that. Unfortunate. Am I afraid of the Knicks in any sort of potential playoff series? I mean, absolutely not. Will the Knicks even get to the playoffs?
That is a good question.
It's possibly unlikely, that they're battling for playing position. So this win certainly helps them in their own little independent battle of relevance, which is an ongoing story for the New York Knicks. But I digress.
Yeah, no. If I'm ranking teams from the Heat, Knicks, Hawks, Pacers, Wizards, kind of down, like the Knicks are kind of relatively high on that list. Of teams that I would feel comfortable, taking down in 4 or 5 games in the playoffs.
1,000%.
Yeah, no question.
I guess transitioning to some individual performances, like we can talk about other aspects of the game, and I've got a nice laundry list of things to get to, but they all kind of feel irrelevant given the result. Like I don't even want to talk about any of the key moments, like Derek White's huge 3 early in overtime, the Brunson and 1 they got called on the floor, where like the game could have been over much sooner had he gone to the line, as well as getting that bucket. The Tatum take to the paint, he drew contact. That layup that went all the way around
that hurt.
Everything except for the bottom of the cup. And then, I mentioned it to open the show, but RJ Barrett, and it wasn't like a game-winning bucket, but his 3, sort of put it out of reach ultimately for the Celtics. That was particularly devastating given the history there. What if I told you, though, that Robert Williams, in a game that we lost by 3, and a game where Grant Williams finished a -18, Derek White finished a -10, that Robert Williams finished a +21. Like I'm at the clutching at straws portion of the show now, Jake, where I'm trying to like capture a nugget of optimism that I can sort of walk away from the computer with and feel good about myself. Is there anything to glean from that +21 from the time?
Oh, no question. I think like Rob and Marcus, when those guys are on the court, the Celtics are freaking unstoppable. The tricky thing with Rob is, and we even got a moment where early in the game he catches a lob and does he tweak his back on that play? Is the conditioning the issue? I'm like at the point where I'm like, Rob, dude, you gotta be conditioned at this point. You've been back for 2 months now, playing NBA basketball. Like if you're not pretty close to how fit you're going to be, how realistic is it that you're going to be able to play more than 35 minutes in the playoffs? Probably not. That being said, he played 35 minutes tonight and was pretty impactful it felt like most of them, which I think is actually a very positive sign for his continual ramp up. Like they're starting to test the boundaries of what Rob can do. And what he can do is play 35 minutes, be a +21. We saw bits of it today. And if you I watched the Grizzlies Warriors game last night, and they get so many points of Draymond Green in the high post at the 3-point line. And teams are really guarding Steph and Clay off pin downs, trying to get the ball around the 3-point line. And they go backdoor and they get so many layups. And Jason and Jalen are better at the rim finishing than Clay and Steph. They need to make that more of their offense. Because one of the go-to plays is, getting Jalen coming off the pin down and then going downhill. But teams are playing them, overplaying them. And they got a couple of them going tonight. What did Rob have today? Only 2 assists. It felt like he should have had way more than that. That needs to become something that they go to more often. because it's there for them. It's there to generate easy buckets. And like part of the issue why the defense was bad was like they couldn't score half the time. So they're getting cross matched. They get the wrong guys matched up with Randall and Brunson, who both are guys that can take advantage of, mismatches. And when you're not scoring, that's when you end up with cross matches in transition. Got to utilize Rob more efficiently, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It did feel like the seams for Jalen and Jason to make cuts were quite tight, like quite limited. And so while Rob is extremely good at finding guys cutting, like those 45 angle like slot drives when he's got the ball at the top of the post, he's generally good at finding the Jays or Derek White or anyone really cutting from that angle. The Knicks did a really good job, to their credit, of cutting off those passing lanes and limiting Rob's potential from that perspective, and also limiting the potential for the Jays to finish at all, get good looks in the paint. I think Tatum did a really good job later in the game of overcoming that and finding ways to get in the paint, utilizing his spin move quite frequently to get advantageous looks and positions in the paint. Jalen did not. We saw a couple of those familiar like mid-range jumpers that went down that used to be cash money, felt like just yesterday, and like suddenly at the same time, I can't remember when the last one went in with any sort of regularity. Credit the Knicks defense, I suppose, in tightening up the defense around the paint there and sort of putting the Celtics in a bit of a stranglehold. We do have some post-game comments that are emerging here on Celtics Reddit. I'll rattle off a few for you, Jake, and let me know what stands out to you. Joe Mazzulla, quote, "I love you, Jalen. I believe in you." That's one. Another one here. So this is from Jaylen Brown post-game, quote, "I've just got to be better, to be honest. Tonight was just a rough game. I'm a better basketball player than I played today." He said the 2 free throws embodied his game tonight, which I think is probably fair. So any of those post-game comments stick out to you? I think maybe the self-awareness from Jaylen Brown is maybe the key takeaway there.
He always says this after he has a bad game.
True.
Like, yeah, he's like, I was bad and I'm better. And he is better. Like, again, it's just tricky with the Jalen lows. It's like when he's not scoring efficiently, I thought the defense, again, once they cranked up the defense, I thought he was really good. He only had, actually, that's the first quarter, 1 turnover. How many turnovers did he have as well? 3 turnovers. That's actually, you live with the Jalen 3 turnovers in a game like this, but you can't be going 8 for 22. And there was I think, was it the third quarter? I don't know. There was a stretch where there were 3 possessions in a row. It was a Jalen missed, turn around. It was a pull up 3, 0 pass possession. And then the third possession he attacked, got to the rim, missed a shot that he usually made. But again, it was a 0 pass possession. And I feel like he was pressing and the low Jalen. It's like, dig myself out of this funk, and it often leads to a deeper hole. And that was an example of what happened tonight. Wouldn't surprise me at all if we get the reverse. Jalen often bounces back from these games in a big way. A Lakers game, and he's had the adductor thing where he missed a couple games, and then he came back. He missed he missed the Heat game, and so Jalen finding his rhythm, I think, is kind of key for him playing well.
Yep.
So hopefully, finds it against the Lakers.
Yeah, we've said it before. He's such a feel-based player, and if he's not feeling it, then the production is just not there. And maybe part of it is as a team, as a coaching staff, as his teammates, is like trying to. And you'd think maybe they'd have this down pat after now years, 7 years of him being on the Celtics, 6 or 7 years. But like understanding like the trigger points for Jaylen Brown and understanding what like gets him into the groove in terms of feeling the game and making him be his best self, because it is very variable as far as like what Jaylen Brown we're going to see on the court every night, which again sounds like a talk radio cliche, but it's true. I feel like we could keep breaking down the game, but it's not a lot of fun to do because it was not very fun in the end. So before we move on, any final takeaways on this one, whether it be strategy on either side or individual performances? Like I know Hauser went 50% from 3.
Hey, that was nice to see. Yeah, he went 2 for 2 and then just was a mess again. Landon Legs, what up? Good to see you back. Brogdon deserves just as much poop as Jalen will receive for today. He was awful, and I feel like Brogdon skates when he has bad games, like 0 free throw attempts. What do you have? Only 1 turnover today. But 4 for 14. Like that's what you're there for. And again, he was part of the stagnation of the offense. So again, I don't want to go too hard on Brogdon, maybe with the personal reasons. We don't actually know what the issue there was. And I think, Joe, we have to get him on the leave Tatum in with Brogdon thing. Like, match those minutes up, let Jades play more of the first quarter and get his rest somewhere else in the game, because it's just starting to feel like we're letting these Tatum starts get away from us. The Brogdon Tatum minutes are just so much better. So that's Joe's got to start doing that.
Yeah. Pretty poor performance there from Malcolm Brogdon. Absolutely. Grant Williams, maybe at least as far as the plus minus goes, the poorest performance in this game. Can I ask the forbidden question? Are you considering dangling Grant Williams in trade talks at this point of the season? I feel sick. I can taste vomit in the back of my mouth even just asking the question, Jake. But where are you at with that? Like, if it's part of a conversation for someone like OG and a bunch of picks going out from the Celtics, are you not hanging up the phone if that's brought up?
I did see a Grant, Pritchard, Gallinari kind of trade with a couple other little salad fillers. Yeah. I think with this team being so close to a title, look, it depends. Is it going to be 2 first-round picks, both of them unprotected? It's a lot to pay for OG, but at the same time, he's so consistent. He's been a player that can, be on a team that's won a title. Defensively, he is a top 10 defender in the NBA, no question. Defensive Player of the Year candidate. If the Raptors had actually been able to string a better season together, he's a guy that's going to be in that conversation, a non-big that can legitimately get in the depoy conversation, which we love here in Boston. And I think, as a guy that, as a team that has these days where they let the defense slip away, he's a guy that's not going to let that happen. And, he can be a catalyst for getting stops and then getting them out in transition and kind of getting the offense back on track. You have to think about it. I think Brad's going to be talking about it. If Grant's, coming up for a contract, that being said, Grant's contract is looking pretty palatable versus what we were feeling earlier in the year. Like, I was kind of worried it was going to be in the 18-ish range. I would be very surprised if the season ended today. He's not even getting the $16 million left over from Horford's deal, I don't think. Yeah. That being said, he's a playoff guy. The versatility, 3-point shot. He just seems to be in a bit of a funk right now. So if he can break out of it, the conversation's different, but the trade deadline's like 2.5 weeks away.
Yeah, absolutely. It is. Yeah, it's just it's such a pressured moment or a situation rather, because of the rapidly approaching trade deadline. It's like, I can imagine the front office to some degree pulling their hair out, wanting to make sure they make the right moves if they're made available to them, prior to this trade deadline that's rapidly approaching. Then again, like you said, you kind of want to rest on your laurels there and just wait for Grant to cook in the playoffs, as he's known to do. So tough. I also feel like before we move on, if we haven't talked about it enough already, we should just talk about Jason Tatum's game, and then it was quite solid. I guess the reason we never lead with this stuff is fortunately we have the luxury of having grown to expect it. Got to the line 9 times, hit all of his free throws. Disappointing long stretches of seemingly not going to Tatum. We were talking about in our playback stream, Jake, he got the ball late and started to cook late in the game, and our first remark was like, well, it feels like he hasn't had the ball in a long time. Yeah, where's this been? Because clearly, the success rate there when you go to him frequently and find him on offensive possessions is like, he cooks, he gets buckets. Obviously, that's not sustainable. You can't go to him on every possession of a game. But, we all had a sense of where this game was going. It was going down the toilet. And in that sense, you kind of want to get to Tatum earlier in a game and let him cook earlier to turn this one around sooner. I don't know. Any takeaways from Tatum's performance other than it was just stellar again?
Yeah, just a casual 35-14, 4 steal block.
Yeah.
He's probably number 2 in the MVP conversation. And it's nights like this where it's kind of just, this is how it goes. And the fact that that's where we're at with Jason Tatum is, and I'm probably get to it with him being named All-Star starter, but they have to, as good as Jalen is, you have to have the self-awareness to get him the ball. It has to be everybody Like, let's get Tatum the ball in the good spots because there was no one on the Knicks, and there is no one on the Knicks that can handle Tatum. Man, he was just. I loved his game winner attempt. So much separation. He's been making a lot more mid ranges this year. Like, I really liked that he didn't go to the step back three. Obviously we only needed the two. I really liked that he took a step in and he was wide open. Just and it went in and out. He was that close.
He's only 24 and he feels like a vet. Like, he feels like a savvy vet, super reliable, on the same tier as Al Horford in terms of just like comfort and reliability with what they give the game, and yet he's like 12 years younger than him.
It's crazy.
Insane.
Yeah, the move that he's developed, like the 9 free throws, like getting in the post and not just like, getting the layups or finding guys, but they're getting the grifting. It's like, it's just not something he had before. And now that he's gotten so strong, it's a very important development. Like, he's just, when things are breaking down, he can go to that and it's like, he's starting to figure out the balance between, okay, am I actually going to get a foul? Or if I go for this move, is it going to be an awful floater? It feels like he's really fine tuning how good he's getting at that feel when it comes to drawing the free throws. So just more good from Tatum.
Yeah, and make no mistake, like, that level of grifting acumen in the playoffs doubles in its value because of how frequent half-court offense is compared to transition and just how the game slows down. So looking forward to that. I mean, yeah, I don't know if I'm emotionally ready for the playoffs yet based on the ebbs and flows of the season, but we've got a little bit of time to prepare ourselves. We've got an All-Star break coming up. And speaking of which, the All-Star voting results are in. We've got the starters from both conferences. So starting with the West here, Jake, let me know if there are any surprises or any snubs or any omissions that were notable to you. But LeBron James is the captain again, which is just insane, and another notch on the very long belt of LeBron James in his career. Steph Curry, Luka Doncic, Nikola Jokic, and you talked about the MVP race and Tatum maybe being firmly in number 2. The gap between 1 and 2 is absolutely insane. Like, he will not catch Jokic unless he misses significant time. And then Zion Williamson, who I thought that was maybe a little surprising given how much time he's missed so far this season. Any surprises there other than Zion for you, Jake?
Yeah, but personally, I would have had both Shea in for Steph. The tricky thing is the Van vote has such an impact on the starters. And so, like, Steph and Zion missing half the year, the fans that are voting don't care as much. I would have had Shea and Sabonis over Zion and Steph. I feel like they deserved it more. But, the gap between one and the rest of the team of the MVP field is pretty wide right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving over to the Eastern Conference All-Star starters, Giannis is the captain again. Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant.
Let's go.
Kyrie Irving, Donovan Mitchell. You'll note the absence of Jaylen Brown's name in the starters there. But looking at those names, obviously at the guard spot, Kyrie Irving, as much as we hate him, let's be honest, like, he's been on the court this season, certainly not off the court. Donovan Mitchell has been incredible. So this looks about right to me. Would you have made any adjustments to this starting 5?
Yeah, I would probably have had someone else in for Kyrie, whether it was Garland, Halliburton, Brunson, even, honestly. I liked Halliburton for this spot. But I think there'll be some people saying today, that's why Jaylen Brown's not an all-star starter, because didn't exactly play like one tonight.
Well, if you're a Sixers fan, and beyond the pity that I personally have for you, just in general, you're thinking, okay, that's weird. There's no like typical center on this starting 5 here. You've got to be feeling the sting of that, like that the league has kind of snubbed you a little bit, right?
Yes, this is probably the best part of the day, is that Embiid now
1000%.
is no longer an all-star starter as well. Tatum has now taken over his spot there, as he's taken all of his valuable playoff winning experience as well. Beautiful. The fact that Tatum now is a 4-time all-star. Is this the second time or third time he's been an all-star starter?
I think it's the second.
Yeah,
that's
I think it's 2 as well.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's 4 all-stars already at age 24, which means it literally, like, he's gonna. This is one of these guys. 4 all-stars already. He's gonna make he's a third All-NBA this year. He was either 5th or 6th in the MVP race last year. He's gonna be in the top 3, 4, 5 again, the MVP race this year. Like, as as much as we all want to win a title this year, how you win a title is with a guy that is consistently a top 5 NBA player. That's who wins NBA titles. And we have one of those players, whether it's going to be this year, next year, the next 5 years. We have one of those guys, and it's great. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, the only thing that's in his way as far as being considered a better Celtic or player than Paul Pierce is just tenure. He just needs to stick it out for another few years. Obviously, ideally win a championship, but as far as just like individual player skill sets, I don't want to underrate Pierce because he was like a master at like getting in the paint and getting to the line, and then the spin, mid-range jump shot, counter move. Like I must not understate that, but like clearly Tatum is on a path to a higher ceiling than what Pierce was ever able to achieve as a Celtic.
Yeah, obviously legend, and one of Pierce's greatest things. He probably makes that shot tonight that Tatum missed.
Yeah,
like that was
100%.
like it was money. You knew, the Al Harrington clip comes to mind as well, right? Like Pierce was so confident in his ability in those spots to knock down big shots. And I think Tatum's behind him for sure in that regard. But as far as players go, I think when you look at the two-way stuff, the ceiling of some of Tatum's offensive outputs, like the 50-point games and stuff like that he pulls out consistently, I think it's okay to say that as far as just like players on a basketball court, Tatum's probably already kind of better than Pierce was. But as far as greatest Celtics of all time goes, he's probably still behind Pierce. And in order for Tatum to go ahead, he's either going to need to stick around for another, 6, 8, 10 years or win a title. As soon as Tatum wins a title, preferably he's here forever and wins multiple titles. But as soon as Tatum wins a title in the Celtics uniform, that's going to be the thing that leapfrogs him like easily as far as like not just best player, but greatest Celtic.
Yeah. And someone who was a huge fan of those Pierce, Ray Allen, KG, and Celtics teams was Danilo Gallinari, who, according to Adam Taylor at Celtics blog, who I believe is aggregating someone else in this report, that Danilo Gallinari wants to return from injury this season. I'm not going to read the entire article, but it seems like he has a sense within himself that he could return prior to the postseason and then play for the Celtics in the postseason. Jake, do you think that's likely? Do you think that it would be a positive for the Celtics if you think about his age, the particular injury that he had, and the obviously necessary ramp up that anyone needs coming back from an injury like that? Like, I suppose it's the best way to ask the question. Would you rather not trade Gallinari and hang on the chance of him coming back and contributing, or trade him on whatever value there is at his potential to come back, later in the season too for another team?
Yeah, it's just one of those things. If the right deal presents itself, like if like a really like a positive wing opportunity presents itself, I think you can't risk the idea that he's going to come back and he's going to be slow to start, and you're going to have to try and work him in, because it does happen to guys. I was trying to look up like when Joe Ingles tore his ACL, because I think there's a perfect symmetry between like the types of guys tearing their ACLs. Like there's the Jamal Murrays who tear their ACL and come back and have a slow start. And I think that's largely to do because so much of their production was based off their ability to get separation and be athletic. Versus Joe Ingles has been really good for the Bucks since coming back from his ACL. And that's because he was never athletic. And there was never a point where he was busting dudes because he was blowing past them or an elite defender. And Gallinari feels that exact same description. Like Gallinari hasn't moved in like 7 years. And so if he's able to get up and down the court and be 6'10" and knock down threes, he's the type of guy who tears their ACL who's going to be able to do it. Even the same age profile as Ingles. So like it's right there. Foreigners, tough, we only,
I want to sing that song, please.
Gallinari. Please, Gallinari. Look, it's an unknowable kind of question, I think, right now.
Yeah.
But they
Put you in a tight spot.
Yeah, but like he seems to be progressing, and so like Joe Ingles did his February 1st, 2022, and came back like a month ago. So we're kind of getting there,
Yeah.
So
More gold from Joey Maz. This was tweeted out by Jared Weiss of The Athletic. Joe Mazzulla was asked, Danilo Gallinari wanting to return from a torn ACL before the end of the season. Quote, I saw him jogging on the treadmill and I was like, I haven't seen you run much faster than that in a game, so I thought he was playing tonight. Was, on the 24th of January, so 5 days ago?
Yes,
Less.
I did see that, and Joe Mazzulla is like the king of delivering jokes with a straight face. Like you read it and it's hilarious, and you watch it and it's like you look very angry delivering that joke.
Yeah.
He's
Huge fan.
I think look. So how far? When did he do it? It was like July or no, August when he did the ACL. So we're getting we're 6 months. March is pretty much around the time when Joe Ingles came back as well. So
yeah,
and that's really what
rehab.
And so like what we need from Gallo is like just knock down threes, and one of the things he's so good at as well is just backing down small defenders. And when you talk about confidence, Danilo, he's not a guy that goes through like extended shooting slumps. Like he's going to find ways. He gets himself to the line. Like he's, for someone that wasn't playing that much, he was still getting, really high free throw rate. So I hope he comes back. I think like he really fits what this team needs. It's just his knee doesn't work right now.
Well, and defensively, I don't know if he was ever going to play himself beyond the second round of the playoffs anyway. So, like, can he come back and contribute, give us, 12 minutes a night for the first couple of rounds, maybe lighten the load on the Jays so they can do their thing in later rounds of the playoffs? Now I'm getting ahead of myself. We don't even know what's happening with this guy. It's all speculation. We should move on just to wrap up this podcast. The upcoming schedule for the Celtics is a little tough leading up to the All-Star break. This was game 50 of the season. There's 9 games remaining now until the All-Star break. 7 of them are home games, but it is a difficult schedule. Just to rattle it off very quickly, we're playing the Lakers, Nets, and Suns at home, then away for the Pistons, then back home for the Sixers, Hornets, and Grizzlies, then on the road for the Bucks, and they're looking pretty good again. They've got Middleton and Giannis back healthy. That's going to be a tough game. And then I believe last year the Pistons were the last team that we played before the All-Star break as well.
We were indeed.
And that was a pretty terrible outcome. Also, obviously, different teams on both ends this year, but very reminiscent of what was a poor end before the All-Star break last season. Jake, like, how do you? I guess we talked about like the way that the season has played out so far. It's been like really good stretches of we just saw a 9-game winning streak. Then like a little pocket of misery, which is where we are. Like if you're looking at a map of this team, like you are here in the pocket of misery. Do you see us sort of? I know this is a tough question to answer, but like how do you see this stretch before the All-Star break going for the team, given the challenges there?
Yeah, no, last year was hilarious. It was like right as the turnaround, people were like, oh, it's kind of a soft schedule. They're winning a lot of games. And people had started to believe, like I remember Zach Lowe released like the Celtics are great in every podcast. And like the day he released that, they lost the Pistons before and it was like, it was a classic. It was the most classic Celtics thing. It was like, we're going to enjoy our time on the All-Star break. Everything's fine. We're going to listen to these podcasts. Dopamine's going to go right into my brain. But no, we can't have nice things for too long. The good news is the Lakers aren't very good. We always play them awesome. Big ABC game. This one would honestly surprise me if they didn't at least turn up and play hard. Like they can, it's one game. Anything can happen. It would really surprise me if they don't like really turn up, which would lead me to think they win because the Lakers aren't very good. Anthony Davis's first game back was yesterday, and he played like 21 minutes, came off the bench. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with AD. They will have had 2 days rest because they were the first game on their road trip. We're going to get the Nets without KD. I've heard nothing about Devin Booker coming back soon, so which would lead me to believe we're not going to get the Suns with Booker. Which is really good. And then it's like Pistons. We always beat the Sixers. Hornets. We always beat the Grizzlies. We always beat the Bucks. And then Pistons. It does sound like another 9-game winning streak when I put it that way. But we could also just lose 2 more in a row. So
just looking at the schedule and then the small amount of travel they do have to do, like again, never been associated with an NBA team or player in any way, but very little travel involved. So the flight to Detroit, not a long flight. It's sort of Midwest, but it's what, a 2-3 hour flight there from Boston. Same with Milwaukee. It's close to Chicago and that Illinois area, Wisconsin. Not a long flight there from Boston. Those are the only two travel games that they need to make, and beyond that, they're at home. So we're seeing a long stretch of like the comforts of home and then like day trips, right, to these neighboring or close by cities. It's not like, these long road trips that we've seen that have coincided with the dips for the Celtics so far this season. So they're not particularly threatening away games. And then of all the games for the Celtics to get up for, because we've always seen them rise to the occasion so far this season, and historically for the Celtics too, the Bucks, Giannis on the road, that's a game to get up for. So as I'm saying this, I'm like, we have talked ourselves into upcoming schedule review. We're always like, I don't know, 10-0, whatever. Like, all these games are winnable because it's true. They could absolutely win all of these games. I think, and because of the pattern for the games that they've lost, it's so hard to predict. But it's always fun to review. Yeah.
So there's 9 games. Let's say they go 6-3, and the 3 games that they lose are to the Pistons twice and the Hornets. That seems like something that the Celtics would do.
Yeah, lose the Hornets games, lose the Pistons games.
Yeah. And beat all the contenders.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to touch on, Jake, before we wrap this up? I think this is a safe space to wrap this one up, talking about a winning future for the Celtics as opposed to the immediate losing past that we just witnessed.
No, I really like, and Landon's called it out. You've nailed it. The pocket of misery. It's a good way because when things are going bad in your life, having a way to label them and disassociate yourself in a way is really helpful. So we're in a pocket of misery. Just understand that this is life. Things happen. It doesn't mean anything. We're just in a pocket of misery. It will end, just like everything else in this world.
Yeah, well, let's leave it there in the pocket of misery. That is going to do it for this one. We'll be back on Sunday night, roughly 24 hours after the Lakers game, which, please God, can we win this game and enter the pocket of joy. Thanks to all of our listeners. We really appreciate you. Jake, love your work, mate. Thanks again.
Go Celtics.
All right, until next time. Go Celtics. Peace.